I will talk about the production of my film, The Dark Side of Chocolate, and I have a script just to make sure that I tell you the truth. Everybody loves chocolate. About 3 million tons are consumed every year, but there is a dark side of the joy of chocolate. As an investigative reporter, I set out to check if the global chocolate companies are binding their own rules against child labor and trafficking of cocoa, trafficking of children. And you probably know the brands like this one. And actually, when I began this research of my film, it took place in my local supermarket. I went down to buy some chocolate, and then I saw chocolate bars like this one. And one of the chocolate bars has a fair trade marked. They were equal all the chocolate bars, but one has a logo of fair trade. And I was just wondering if one was fair trade, what about the other 6 chocolate bars? So actually I just went home and Googling on this issue as a consumer, not as a journalist. I was just curious about how they made chocolate bars. 6 one was without a logo and one was with a logo. So when I Googled, I found out that there was no journalism on this subject. It was only reports from NGOs about child labor and trafficking of children. But in a modern world, I think journalism is very important because it has a big impact on how people are reacting. So for me, you know, a report on a university it's good, but at the end of the day, I think it's more important that you are showing people how it is for real. So this was my my issue. I want to find out if it was in West Africa for real. So in my research, I think I was going to Africa, to Ivory Coast. As you can see, Ivory Coast produced more than 38% of all cocoa which goes into the chocolate bar. So one country have a big market on cocoa. And so I decided to go to Ivory Coast and Mali, and the first clip we will see was my researching on trafficking of kids. I want to find out if it was going on in Mali.
We visit the local head of the bus companies. Since he doesn't want to step forward, we use a hidden camera. While we talk, a man suddenly turns up.
Okay, we just got a girl. Come, let's go.
The man has spotted a girl entering a bus with a female trafficker.
Maybe I can step in here and look down. I'll just step in and look.
Once we get to the bus, the woman has disappeared.
This is the girl, you know, that was they took out of the bus now.
Yeah.
What's your name?
Segu is a village 450 kilometers away from this bus station.
But Why is she here?
Musoi, I am Mufe, Kibita Munsor or Cote d'Ivoire.
According to Kibita was right.
Etunagla Kibita Warsora.
The girl says she's 12, but Yushao thinks she's younger. She was promised work in Bouquet, an area with many cocoa plantations.
Isomo wanyana fimbilawa. Mene sera katasa warti bolo ube mufo.
Ube nkorofo.
Ni sera kataso sisa no warti bolo ube mufo.
Wafo kone matawa nyina.
Itara yeno, ubebe mwoka, ki neni, ki bugo, dobi kuntigere. Ode beno, ubone ya kapukubita wado, tuwada umare, ubita besa chama ke baraka fuso. Bon, vraiment, merci beaucoup. Okay.
The girl is now handed over to social services, who will bring her back home.
Yes, this was just a scene from the southern part of Mali, where I just went with my local stringer and my hidden camera, just to get the documentation of how they take the children from the bus station. And they are, some of them are paid by traffickers to the families, and others is just taken from the villages, and they promise them that they can get work in Ivory Coast. And you have to know that there is it's far away from that kind of area in Mali into Ivory Coast. It's more than 1,000 kilometers. So this was heartbreaking to see this girl, and we didn't manage to get the trafficker. But most of the girls who are victim of trafficking, they go into the plantation as a mate for the plantation owners. So the problem was I had to find out how many people were working under those conditions. And I think, yeah. This is figures which is from the US Department of State. They instigated the research, further research, and find out that it's more than 100,000 work under the worst form of child labor in Ivory Coast. And 12,000 are victims of human trafficking. So, and this is not legal to work. I've heard many times that people saying, well, in Africa it's the culture that the kids are helping the parents in the plantation. But this is not kids, they have their parents with them. This is victims, it is kids down to 8 years old, taken from their village in the neighbor countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, Togo, Benin, and then they take the children and they go into Ivory Coast. The next part we will see is how I was interviewed one of the biggest exporters of cocoa in Ivory Coast. He is original from Lebanon, and he runs a very big business in Ivory Coast, and he sells the cocoa beans mostly to Nestle and Kraft Foods, which is, you know, making chocolate bars like Marabou and Toblerone, as you probably know. And I was just asking him, and he has his big company in a big place in Ivory Coast, and I was just asking him if he knew about the trafficking and child labor.
Je peux rassurer le monde entier. Le monde entier. Ce n'est pas seulement l'Amérique ou l'Europe, qu'aujourd'hui la Côte d'Ivoire est un pays où il n'y a pas des enfants esclaves dans les plantations, il n'y a pas des enfants qui travaillent dans les plantations. On a vérifié, on a mis des comités en place pour suivre, et jusqu'à aujourd'hui, on n'a pas eu un seul rapport qui nous dit qu'il y a des enfants esclaves. Et même dans les frontières.
So you don't think that the children from Mali and Burkina Faso are being trafficked to the Ivory Coast to work in the cocoa plantation?
Non, 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 non. Nous sommes premiers producteurs de cacao. Nous sommes premiers producteurs de cacao et si on n'achète plus le cacao, vous savez un peu que c'est quel désastre ça va créer au monde. Donc aujourd'hui, il ne faut pas jouer avec ces mots-là. Je pense qu'on a les preuves, ils peuvent venir voir. Il n'y a pas des enfants esclaves dans les plantations.
We decide to visit the plantations ourselves to see if it's true that no children are working here. We choose a random plantation in the area where Saf Cacao gets its cocoa.
So they work there? Yes. The kids? Yes.
We come across 4 little boys and a man. They all come from Burkina Faso. They don't seem to be on vacation. The plantation worker says the children are aged 10 to 12. None of the children goes to school or can speak the local language. According to international labor laws, this is illegal.
Yes, so it was so easy for me to get out in the bush and just find people who know about this issue. And the problem was I would like to ask all the big companies how they are dealing with this issue. But it was very difficult for me to get any comments on the subject. I wrote Nestle, Kraft Fruit, ADM, Cargill, all the big companies, but they just hired a communication manager from London to dealing with me, and it was, you know, this is how to be an investigative journalist. It's so difficult to get in touch with the big companies, so they just buy a spin doctor as flag to take care of persons like me. And it was so important for me to get some comments from the companies because normally it is best when you are doing pieces like this to have the comments on for an explanation how this works. Maybe there is a good explanation, I do not know, but probably there is. And they're saying that they just sent me a letter from this communication manager, and she wrote that they do not have the control of the plantation because they do not own the plantation, so therefore they do not have the responsibility of how the cocoa were produced. So this was the answer I got from all the companies. And Nestle, which it was the biggest food company in the world until Kraft Fruit bought Cadbury in England. So I decided to go to Nestle's headquarters in Vevey in Switzerland because I thought that it was important that they saw how it was.
Nestle will now get a chance to see how most of their cocoa is grown.
According to international labor laws, this is strictly forbidden. But it is also the opposite of what Saf Cacao and the other chocolate companies have promised the consumers. That child labor must not occur in the chocolate industry. In 2008 and 2009, he rescued over 150 children. His list includes children aged 7, children from Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger.
Les 105 enfants, nous les avons remis à la structure chargée et l'éducation des enfants.
What's your name? How do you do? Huh?
Yes, and shortly after this showing, I was arrested by the police of Switzerland, and I got a ticket flight back to Copenhagen the same day, and I am not able to go to this canton in Switzerland anymore. I'm not allowed to go to Ivory Coast or to Mali anymore. I have tried to get a visa for those countries, but they rejected me, and I am now doing a follow-up number 2 on the claim that they are doing a lot of projects in those countries, but I want to show what kind of project it is. They say they have spent more than $75 million the past 10 years on projects, but I would like to show the consumers of chocolate what kind of project it is. And it will be out in 25 countries from December 2012, of course. And so right now, this is what I am doing. I'm doing the follow-up film, and I think that there has been a progress in this industry, because now they are more seriously when I contacting the companies. I have been invited to some of the companies for a meeting. And of course, I go to the meetings, but they just try to tell me that they do not have the responsibility of how it is going on. So with this, I would like to say thank you very much.